Every team, every topic, everywhere. This is Believe.
Welcome into another edition of the JMU Sports News Podcast. I am Ben Conlon. I've been taken hostage, and I'm joined by Jack Fitzpatrick. Jack, how are you?
Jack, I just said, we're off to a great start here. Bennett.
Be kind of sweet if you only ask yourself questions during the podcast. Jack, how do you feel about the transfer portal?
I'm actually worried about you. Are you okay? That backdrop looks really scary. Just a blank piece of drywall.
It's a little bleak over here, but we're hanging in there. It's the Christmas spirit, holiday spirit.
Oh, we're speaking of Christmas spirit. Oh.
What is it?
I was supposed to turn on that Christmas tree in the background up there.
Uh-huh.
But the batteries are out.
That's tough.
That was really anticlimactic.
Should we be talking about Kobe King Hawaii yet, or do we have ad reads?
You have to hold off a little bit longer on your Kobe King Hawaii talk, which I know you're chomping at the bit to get there. That is the last segment on today's podcast.
Yeah.
First up, you do have to talk about the Valley Collab House.
Yep, 3-notched. We love them. Sponsoring us through basketball season. Hopefully I'll get there soon for another visit. We got a visit in the fall. It's just a very cozy place with fantastic beer. It makes me very happy. If you're in Harrisonburg, highly recommend visiting. And fortunately, if you're not in Harrisonburg, they do have a lot of locations in other spots in Virginia, which we have also visited together.
I think we've been to we've been to 4 of their 5, I want to say.
We've definitely, I remember Charlottesville, Harrisonburg, Richmond. Was there in
Roanoke?
Oh, we did Roanoke. I forgot about Roanoke. Yeah,
Roanoke.
Wow. So what are we missing?
I think Virginia Beach.
Okay, that's doable.
All right, next time we're at ODU.
Next time we're at ODU, we'll be there.
And each brewery has their own specific thing, so you can find all flagships at each and every one. So of course you can get your 40 Minuteman. Man, I cannot talk today. Your Minuteman IPA wherever you go, but you can get fun exclusive beers at each brewery. So if you're around the Harrisonburg area, pop on in. If you're then in Richmond the next day, pop on in. If you're in Roanoke, same thing goes. And while you're drinking that beer, you can be watching basketball and betting it.
There's a little Santa down here.
Did you even know it was there?
Nah, I didn't notice that. That's awesome.
That is the Christmas spirit. Basketball is back, and Bet Online remains your number one source for all of your sports betting needs this season. You'll always find the latest odds, team matchup info, player news, and game trends at Bet Online. And as your continued source for all of your sports wagering information, Bet Online features live betting, free contests, and giveaways all season long. Always the fastest and easiest way to bet all of your favorite sports and events, whether it's NFL, NBA, NHL, MMA, tennis, boxing, college basketball, college football, bowl season, even golf. Head to betonline.ag to join and receive your 50% welcome bonus with your first deposit. Make sure to use promo code BELIEVE to receive your rewards. BetOnline, where the game starts.
Kurt Cignetti, folks. Contract extension.
Do you want to get us into the X's and O's of it all? I mean, it was a very interesting contract that I don't think I've seen this type of setup ever. I will say that I don't necessarily dive into the specifics of other coaches' contracts all that deeply, but this did seem like it had a very interesting little amendment in it.
Yeah, I think the amendment's like the interesting part because it looked like from reporting from the DNR, it only adds 1 year to his deal, I think, because he already
announced in April. So there was already an extension in place that was announced in April through 2027. This then, quote unquote, extension was actually just a 1 year addition. But I think it was the stipulation added that was more of the extension.
Yeah, because I don't think it boosts his pay. But if he wins 8 FBS games in a season, they just add a year on. So any season he wins 8 FBS games or more, he just stays another year with the contract, right?
Wouldn't it be hilarious if he gets to like 2028? So the last year of his like contract, he's won like 7 FBS games every year. They're getting bowl eligible, but not necessarily living up to it all. JMU fans getting a little heated, and then out of nowhere he wins like 10 games, and then he gets like that extra year added on and just like starts chugging along that way.
It's a little bit of a weird thing. I was more surprised that there wasn't like apparently a pay raise that goes with it, which is interesting. So I don't know. We'll see. And then it sounded like his buyout remains very similar. So that was also interesting. But like for the near term, his buyout's pretty significant. I think if he leaves before like 2024 or something, it's like 1.25 million if he goes to a Power Five. So like that's significant.
I wanted to get your take on it where they, instead of just adding, let's say, another 3 or 4 years at the end of this contract, it's this way it's set up where if he hits 8 FBS wins or more, he gets that extra year. How do you think that will play in with that buyout? Because traditionally, right, or correct me if I'm wrong, the longer the contract is, normally the bigger the buyout is.
Yeah. Typically, like the early stages of a longer contract, you're going to have a bigger buyout. So I don't know exactly how it could change, might change, whatever in the future. I also think if they have the success that they're expecting to have in the next like 1 to 3 seasons, he might be gone. So we'll see what happens. But I know there were some people like on Facebook that were commenting once they announced it, and they were like, "We've seen this before." It's like, yeah, he's probably not finishing the 6-year contract. Like, you shouldn't expect that given his salary and like how much he's winning. If they're like a borderline college football playoff team, which some fans and Cignetti has said that they hoped could be a reality, then no, they're not paying him enough, right? Like he's underpaid if he's not making $1 million and he's taking them to like a college football playoff. That would be underpaid for the market.
Yeah, 100%. Although I will say, I think there's only like maybe a handful of schools that he would genuinely leave to because I think he'd give JMU the opportunity to like raise the salary if another team came to him. The only team that I'm genuinely worried about it's West Virginia. So if you are a Dukes fan like sorry, you're a Dukes fan like we are, you gotta hope Neil Brown has a good year.
Yeah, that would be one that I think would be kind of a no-brainer from his view. So ideally, West Virginia wins out. And he doesn't have the opportunity. But we'll see what happens. I'm excited that he's around for a while. I think they're going to be really good next year. They've been killing it in the portal. They're loaded up with guys. They return a lot. They should be really good.
They flipped a Coastal kid, right?
Yeah.
Which was a huge get. But I think more so was that quarterback out of Ashburn, Virginia, a Wake Forest transfer, technically. But break it down.
Yeah, I guess his last name is Griffith. I don't really know. But he's Wake Forest transfer, Brett Griffith, I guess. Griffis, as Jack has a coughing fit off stage. But he's a pretty good quarterback, was highly touted out of high school, decent offers in the portal, including Colorado offered him with Deion Sanders. I think Georgia Southern and Old Dominion were also offers that he shared. So he's a talented guy, 4 years of eligibility left, which is exciting. So you've essentially got him plus Jordan McLeod for multiple seasons, and then whoever returns. So they should have good depth and competition in the spring and then in the fall at quarterback, which is a good thing. So it was nice to get 2 in the portal. I think that makes sense. They're probably in a good spot now at quarterback.
Yeah, I kind of love the idea of Cignetti getting a guy with 4 years of eligibility, right? Like me and you were kind of talking about maybe you go after and get another kid that has 1 or 2 years that you can compete with McLeod but has that experience, that starting quarterback experience. This is essentially getting a freshman in here, a freshman from high school, because he really didn't even play it. He didn't play at Wake, and he has all 4 years.
Yeah, it's and then his brother did play at Wake, so I think they're, at least for me at the initial stage of him committing, there was some confusion because it was like, oh, is that the guy who came in? That was Sam Hartman's backup, who like lit up VMI. No, that's his older brother, but he is a good player that had some really good offers. So they've got better depth at quarterback, which I think is exciting and probably necessary.
I don't know if you mentioned this. He was a 3-star coming out of high school. Did you watch his huddle tapes?
I did not watch his huddle tapes. Did you watch his huddle tapes?
keep talking about it because his huddle tapes, man, they were actually pretty good. Like he was slinging it, and I know, of course, it's huddle tapes, it's highlights, it's the best of his best, but pocket collapsing, my man's can throw it on the run and put it right where it needs to be. He's mobile, he's accurate, he's got a good little arm on him. I'm excited about him. I think there might be a I'm not saying this is going to happen, but I think there's a possibility he even might beat out Jordan McLeod this year.
I think it'll be competitive. Like, I think he's one that has some pretty good pedigree, so I'd expect him to at least come in there and start to learn the system and maybe compete. And then you might have Barnett doing the same. And then I don't know if Billy Atkins is going to stay, but maybe he makes a leap and is at least in the mix for something, even if it's just the backup role. Because Atkins has had good like camps before, and they've talked about things they like. He just obviously struggled last year during some of the games. But I don't know. It seems like they're in a pretty good spot. They added Elijah Surratt as well, Josh Surratt's brother, who's a wide receiver from St. Francis, had 43 catches last year. I think 12 of them were touchdowns.
Wow.
So he's like 6'3", 205 and can run.
Okay, like that. That sounds nice.
He's got 3 years left, so he's good.
Back to the quarterback really quick.
Yes.
Do you think we see Billy and Alonzo potentially enter their name in the portal or be maybe late movers? Because with him coming in with 4 years of eligibility, you think he would then jump over both Barnett and Atkins and mean at least that number 2 spot. But also we're kind of at the end of the portal season, or at least the craziness of the portal season. So at this point, do you expect Barnett or Atkins, either one, to enter the portal?
They still could. I know I think you can't take official visits now for like 2 or 3 weeks. And I guess the high school signing day is the 21st. So we're recording this on December 20th. But I think after that, and even maybe after spring, maybe they try to go through spring ball and then they get in or something like that. I'm sure both guys would be super enticing to like even lower level G5 or FCS schools.
Yeah.
So I think they could go through spring, see where they actually stand, especially if you're like Barnett, who kind of moved up the ranks, highly touted. You know, if you were in the backup job, right, you're in a pretty decent spot to even start in a couple of years. But it's also not given or anything like that. And with Cignetti, right, where he could leave and things could shake up dramatically at the quarterback spot. And then at the same time, if you are like McLeod's backup, you could be the backup and they could still go right back to the portal. So it's not like if you're the backup now, right, it's not a given that, oh, well, if I just wait, I'm going to have that chance. So most people aren't going to be a Cole Johnson and sit around for a while. So I don't know. It'll be interesting to see how they take the news of a guy with 4 years left coming in.
Yeah, I think it might make a real shake up of that quarterback room here in the near future. Anyone else in the transfer portal that has hit that you want to talk about? Or I know you've been following a lot closer than I have.
Those were 2 of the most recent. They've added 3 total wide receivers. They also got a guy from South Florida. That's one of the bigger ones. I know we mentioned the kicker. I don't know if we actually mentioned that on the podcast or after. They're going after the Texas State kicker. He committed to Kansas, so they won't have him. But they've got some good guys in the portal. Signing day, it seems like they've done a nice job. One of their wide receivers, Barry, 6'6" kid from Maryland. Maryland offered him like yesterday. So it'll be interesting to see if he stays locked into JMU or if he in-state Big Ten school, if they can flip him at the last minute. So we'll see there. But they've added a pretty good class. And I don't know. They seem like they've done well in recruiting, and they haven't had any major guys announce that they'll leave yet, which is big.
Yeah, I think that's the biggest part. Less so about who they've brought in the portal than the guys who haven't left. Because I fully thought Walker or Torres Jones were going to leave, or someone on the defensive line, or even Kalon Black. Like, I thought a big name was going to enter the portal, which still very well could happen, but it hasn't happened yet, and I'm shocked by that.
Yeah, if they do return everyone and then also add these guys, like, I mean, I don't think it's wild to think they could, like, run the table or get very close to it.
Well, they're not bringing back everyone. They lost a huge player in Andrew Adair.
That's true. We haven't talked about that enough. Some of the transfers, the long snapper depth chart, what's that mean for chemistry in the room?
You're asking the wrong guy because I just don't know.
But yeah, you get every guy in the 2 deep. Plus some of these transfer additions. That's pretty exciting, especially when you look at like a UVA is not an overwhelming Power 5 team that they're playing against. UConn just got kind of smoked by Marshall at the beginning. Like they're getting better, but they're not good.
Yeah.
And then what they added, Utah State, was kind of a weird one. But
Woo.
like the Sun Belt's obviously tough too. But like they could legitimately put themselves in a like they should be winning 10 plus games type of scenario going into the season, which is kind of fun.
Yeah, they should be able to win 10 plus games, and Cignetti should get another year.
Yeah, he would add to his years. That's true.
Such a weird breakdown.
That was strange.
So men's basketball, moving things right along. Men's basketball, they just took down LIU by a score of a lot more than the other team. They're going to play Coppin State, I believe, tomorrow.
Yes.
We're recording on the 20th, so they take them on the 21st. I would assume that's also going to be a win. They are 9-3 this season, 2 losses against Power 5 teams. That third loss against Valpo, which was a quad 4 loss, not a good look for our at-large chances. But are there any takeaways at all from this non-conference slate? Like, at all?
It's getting worse, which is like honestly impressive. Like South Dakota
like
State is free fall. They're not good.
Yeah, I was gonna say, is that what you mean? Like every team that they played have gotten worse from their Ken Palm?
It's just like a lot of the teams suck to begin with, and they just like haven't moved a lot. But then it's like coming in, it was like, oh well, like North Carolina is the best team in the country. It's like, no, they're not. And then like Virginia's kind of in a similar spot, Ken Palm wise. Like AP poll had them like at the back end of it, but Ken Palm had them in like the top 10. They might have been like top 5 for most of the year. So they're pretty steady when you look at like Ken Palm. And then you look at some of the others. South Dakota State was like fringe top 100. They played Oral Roberts the other day on Monday. They lost by 39. I mean, they suck.
Oh.
They're not good.
What about Valpo? Has their Ken Palm gone up or down?
Valpo sucks. Valpo started the season at 215. They're now 292. That's a horrible loss. Like Valpo's terrible. And then since that game, they lost to Belmont, Murray State. They beat Trinity Christian. Mississippi beat them by 1 billion. And then they had a competitive home win over Elon, which is 343 in Ken Palm. So like Valpo's not good. They have their wins. Okay, so Valpo's wins. You have 5 wins. One of them is against the non-D1. 3 of them are against sub 300 Ken Palms, and their other win is against JMU. So not a great loss there. But it's just like everyone who you thought like, oh, maybe that team's good. Maybe Buffalo could be something. And then you see that they like have a neutral site loss to Howard. Like they're not great.
They're not. And they're going to finish it at Coppin State in a very interesting 3-game road trip here. Going to be at Coppin State to wrap up the non-conference schedule tomorrow. Then on the 29th after Christmas at Georgia State. Then 2 days later, you got to get from Atlanta, Georgia to Huntington, West Virginia. I'm not sure what that travel plan looks like. Not sure where they're flying into from Atlanta. That'll be interesting to see how they handle the travel from Atlanta to Huntington, West Virginia. And Marshall's the second best team in the Sun Belt right now that runs at an extremely high tempo, much like the Dukes. So a high-scoring game that is going to be an early test for the Dukes. And I think one of the takeaways I have from this non-conference slate was that the one time they were kind of tested with tired legs, 3 games in 3 days, all on the road, they lost that game, which kind of worries me for going to Marshall with 3 road games in a row and a tough travel schedule. It kind of worries me that they may have some dead legs in that one, and it may be a bad loss that won't be indicative of how this team actually is, but indicative that this team maybe doesn't travel that well, / doesn't. I don't want to try and put them down. They've had a fantastic non-conference, but like that's my takeaway. That like the one time they were kind of backs to the wall, you have tired legs, you're playing in a tough spot, they couldn't come through.
The good part is, I guess, from road game 1 to road game 2, there's the Christmas break in between, so they're like that part shouldn't go too
so it's
much.
like not a true road trip, but it's
right.
You're not
and
playing
Coppin
at home.
State's a pretty easy one in terms of it's like Baltimore or whatever. But then after that, I think that is a good point. So you play the night of I think it's the night of, maybe it's during it's a night game at Georgia State.
Yeah, 7 p.m.
And then you go play Marshall at 2 o'clock on a Saturday. So it's a pretty quick turnaround. Marshall is going to be at home on the 29th against App State. So Marshall hasn't played a road game since December 13th. They might send players home maybe for like a day or two around Christmas, depending on where they're from, but that's not like, game travel. So it's pretty easy for them travel wise. So that's an interesting little point. Is like, yeah, JMU doesn't have a full 48 hours to recover, and then they have a little bit of travel. And Marshall's at this point, one of the other, maybe the second best team in the Sun Belt. So that's going to be an interesting one. If you can get that one on the road though, with a little tough travel schedule.
Oh yeah,
look out.
That's a game where like if you get it, I'm all in, and then if you lose it, I'm not out at all. It's just going to be like that's a spot where if you're a sports bettor, say you're betting with Bet Online or something like that, using code BELIEVE to sign up to get your 50% welcome bonus. But
sure,
if you see that JMU's +1, +2, even favored in that matchup, which I don't think they will be. Ken Palm has Marshall to win that by 2, so I imagine the line will be around Marshall -2. I think I might hammer Marshall on that spot.
It'll be an interesting one for sure because they've played pretty well this year, and both teams love to fly, like in terms of their speed, like tempo wise, like they go very fast. So it is one that like every advantage you can have physically is a big deal. Fortunately for JMU, they're super deep, and they just got Terrell Strickland back, so they add even
talk about that
option.
How did Terrell play against his dad?
He was phenomenal in that game. He was really good,
which is surprising. Maybe surprising to me and not to you, but he comes in after not playing all season and gets 15 minutes, puts up 8 points, 5 steals, 8 assists, 2 rebounds. But I'm kind of shocked that he had that much run in a game in his first game back.
You have 15 minutes and then to have like 8 assists to 1 turnover, you'd think there might be rust. Because it was one of his hands, I think.
Yeah, well, he had a whole cast on it.
So it's not like he's not practicing. It's not like he was working on his shooting or practicing with that kind of stuff probably for a little bit here until he finally got healthy. But yeah, cool for him to play well against LIU, which has had a really tough season, to say the least, to this point. But it was one JMU was expected to win, but it was still fun with Rod Strickland being the coach of LIU and Terrell being actually able to play against it. It would have been a huge bummer if he couldn't play in that game.
Does it worry you at all that LIU hung 79 on JMU, or not at all because JMU played their D team for a majority of this game?
They scored of their 79, they scored 42 of them in the last 10 minutes. So wow. I think it was they outscored JMU 42-20 over the last quarter of the game. So I think it's one that was like very much over, and they're like, yo, let's run some of our guys who are not going to play a single minute in Sun Belt games.
And we'll probably see that against Coppin State too.
Yeah, it's a dog crap schedule, man. Marshall game will be fun.
Although JMU lost the game the last time they played each other.
Played Marshall?
No, Coppin.
Oh, that was like wasn't that a row Coppin State loss?
Uh-huh.
Yeah, it was a tough one.
They beat them in overtime in 2018, 81-71. The next year, at home again in 2019, a 94-78 loss.
Yeah, there's just no reason to lose to them.
Yeah, if JMU loses to them, I'm all out.
All out.
Probably not, but our at-large chances are gone. If we win out, our at-large chances are nice.
Yeah, it could be interesting actually if they start to rack, put some wins together. Valpo hurts them a little bit, but their net's still pretty good right now.
Yeah, we'll be fun. I can't wait for conference play. Next podcast we'll be able to talk about. We'll be able to talk previewing conference play. We'll be able to preview Georgia State Marshall. Yeah. That'll be the return of the 3-notch preview. So excited for that. But first, Coppin State. And then women's basketball on the other side. They just wrapped up game 1 of the Hawks Classic. Is that what they're calling it?
I think so.
Yeah, the Hawk Classic just wrapped up game 1. Kind of demolished Eastern Michigan. It was kind of a 10-point game back and forth in the first quarter. Second quarter, they were looking a lot better than Eastern Michigan, though. Then the third quarter, the flip just switched, and the Dukes went on a huge run and built up a 30-point lead. and never relinquished it, of course. And Bennett, who
Kobe
was
King
in
Hawaii
the
is back.
sorry, who's back?
Kobe King Hawaii. She's back. I mean, well, I keep saying she's back. This is her first time she's ever played in a JMU uniform, so she
She's
made her
here.
debut.
How'd she look? We've been waiting all year for this moment, and all you can say is, well, she's not technically back.
I would say that she was everything you could have hoped for and more. So they gave her 17 minutes. She goes 11 points and 4 of 8 shooting, 4 rebounds, 1 assist, a couple turnovers. She was highly efficient. She had one play late in the game where she got it baseline, hit a fadeaway jumper. There's just players on the team that can't do that. And she was smart with the ball, had a couple 50-50 balls that she was tapping around in the air to herself away from a defender. She's just very polished. And it was a joy to watch. They played really well, and she was kind of outshined by Kozlova, who had 18 on 9 of 11 shooting. She started the game and they just fed it to her every possession, and she was scoring. If you can have that, plus Anna Goodman gives you some run, some positive run, you're good in the post. I mean, they won the game. They won the game by 35 points, and Kiki Jefferson was 4 of 16.
You stole my exact line. I was going to say they demolished Eastern Michigan 78-43, and Kiki finished with just 9 points. That's a great sign for JMU. That's a fantastic sign.
Yeah, it's huge. And then I don't know how great Eastern Michigan is necessarily, but they were 6-2 coming into the game. So it's I don't know if the 6-2 is oh wow, they're elite, but I think they're, if I'm not mistaken, I think even their her hoop stats rating was respectable. They've got a pretty competitive team, and their losses this year were each by 6 points. So they were competitive in those 2 losses. To 35 piece them with your best player, shooting 25% from the floor is insane. It's the first time I've seen them play in a long time where when they played fast, I was yes, keep going fast. You look efficient. You're killing it. I think they had more assists to turnovers again.
Yeah,
consecutive time. That's got to be 3 years since that happened.
Yeah, they only had how many turnovers? They only had 10 turnovers, 17 assists, and they forced Eastern Michigan into 24 turnovers, and Eastern Michigan only had 5 assists. That is the recipe to win for the Dukes. And not only that, we talked about Kiki only having 9 points. Peyton McDaniel, their number 2 scoring option, had 9 points. So your number 1 and number 2 players didn't hit double digits, and you were able to just absolutely wax an otherwise okay team, an okay mid-major team. That's huge. Kozlova, shout out to her. Fantastic down low. King Hawaii, an amazing jolt for this team. Claire Neff hit some big-time shots. She hit a contested fadeaway 3 bank shot in. Granted, I don't think that's something you can necessarily count on. That was her only made shot. But from a defensive side, she was really all over on the court, doing a lot of the dirty work, very necessary for this Dukes team. And she didn't jack up a lot of shots. That's the key. If Claire Neff is 1 for 3 from 3 a game, I'm totally fine with that. And she's making an impact on the defensive end. That's the type of role I think she needs to kind of step into. And I think this team can go pretty far through the Sun Belt, because you would assume, I think this is a fair assumption, correct me if I'm wrong, Kiki will have better games, Peyton McDaniel will have better games, Kozlova will come down, and you think Kobe King Hawaii can maintain, a 4 of 8 for 11-point type of performance, this team can win a lot of Sun Belt games.
Absolutely. Yeah, they can really be pretty darn solid. I was also really impressed. It feels like Hazel's taking a step. She was 5 of 8, and that's coming off consecutive games where she was 4 of 9. So there were some early in the season where she was kind of inefficient, but when she's efficient, she gets steals, can have some assists. She's a dynamic player, and when you can have her as your 4th option, it becomes pretty cool. So I like the way she's playing. I thought she was really efficient. Thought the entire team looked awesome. They've got a pretty significant test tomorrow because they play back-to-back games in this one.
Yep. You're very right on Hazel being efficient. Second most efficient team efficient player on the team tonight. First was Kozlova, but not far behind her. Hazel was the second most efficient, followed by McDaniel, Rowe, King Hoea, Germán, Odekirk, Neff, Kiki, and then the rest.
Yeah, it's one of the most encouraging performances we've had in a good while. And they got a St. Joe's team tomorrow at 3 p.m. on ESPN Plus. That is 10-1. Their only loss was on the road to a ranked Villanova team. They've beaten Temple, Vanderbilt, Drexel, among others. They've got a solid team. So you can go out and boost the strength of schedule. This is the kind of game that I wanted like the men to have on the schedule, where it was like a solid mid-major, but they just don't have that. The women, it's a nice one here because they've had some teams here the last few weeks that they're, probably a little bit better than. But to play a team like this that isn't they're not a top 10 team nationally, but they're someone that is solid, I think it's a good test, especially on the road.
It's going to be fun.
It's going to be good. I'm going to check her hoop stats before I run out of the subscription. Let's see if it tells us anything interesting about the kids from St. Joe's.
As I chug my water. On a complete aside, on a more personal level, Bennett, as you look that up, don't you hate it when you can feel the sore throat coming on?
Oh, those are the worst.
It's like sitting in the back of my throat, and it's like I'm here. After when you wake up tomorrow morning, I'm going to have arrived.
That's tough. You're dying.
Yeah.
Let's see.
R.I.P. me.
They got a pretty good rating, it appears. Whoa. Well, it's not impossible. Her hoop stats has them at 107th nationally out of 361 teams. So top third of the NCAA here with this
What's JMU?
Side. And James Madison University, it's really not. Remember this user interface, unbelievable.
It is. It's not as simple as Ken Pom.
It's frustrating. They're actually they're right near them. They've got them at 131, although I don't think that includes today's game, which was by far their most efficient performance on both ends. So that's one that'll probably skew it a good bit because they played really well.
So a game where they'll be underdogs, but JMU can pull it out. But very winnable. Look, I'm changing my tune. I'm all in on this women's basketball team. It's going to be a fun season on the hardwood. I can't wait for conference play.
Yeah, what are they? They're 9-2 now with 6 wins in a row.
They're 9-2, and I know you brought this up last podcast, but imagine how different this season feels if they beat Maine.
If they win the opener against Maine, they're 10-1 with their loss to North Carolina with a lead at halftime.
That is a vastly different season than a home opener loss to Maine.
Yeah. So I'm interested to see what they can do once Sunbelt play starts on the 29th. So they got one more. If they get by St. Joe's, I think they're really looking at a special season. You get that road game and then start rolling into Sunbelt play. You could have a team that's pretty dangerous.
Yeah, if you can pick up the St. Joe's win and then roll into a couple more wins in a row, they might be getting receiving votes.
Who knows? They're close. They're getting close.
Yes, sir. Anything else you want to add before we get up on out of here? This might be our quickest since the off season.
This was definitely a quick one, but I don't think I have too much else.
All right. For Bennett Conlin, my name's Jack Fitzpatrick. You guys have a wonderful rest of your day. See you.
Thank you for listening to Believe. You can show support to your host by subscribing to the show and giving us a 5-star rating on your preferred platform. Check us out at Believe.com and search for BLEAV on YouTube.